Natives Unlimited series. Yeah, welcome. Nice to have you here for the very first panel discussion on VUCA. I'm Elena Pugia, and I'll be the moderator of this discussion. And also, I will tell you a little bit about us, data natives, and the Data Natives Unlimited concept, and then introduce our panelists and have a discussion around the concept of VUCA. First of all, what does VUCA stand for? Volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, and complex systems. It was a concept that was introduced after World War II to define the moments that we're living back then. And I think we think here at the natives that it is quite appropriate to how the world has been going in the last year. So before I will start talking about this and introducing the first topic of Data Natives Unlimited, let me a little bit talk to you about us, data natives, and the concept behind what we're putting together this year. So I would like to share with you my screen so I can share a presentation that we have prepared here so you can see a little bit more the concept. There you go. Let me put it in full screen mode. Perfect. So as you know, we're living in strange and uncertain times. And for that reason as well, we also have to change a lot of things in data natives. So data natives was a concept that started in 2015 with a community of data scientists that has now grown to 80,000 around the world. And it started in 2015 as a community and a media platform. And right now, every year it had community gatherings led by different ambassadors around the world, and also a big flagship event that took place in Berlin. We have more than 50 communities around the world, and this flagship event brought everybody together, more than 3,000 people together in Berlin. And this year, as everything changes, we are also going digital. We're certainly craving to gather together offline, but given that a lot of things are still uncertain, as we said, and I'll be just repeating myself throughout the evening, we also wanted to make sure that we have a safe environment for everybody to meet. Plus, I'll have to admit that I'm a big fan of online gatherings because I find them a bit more efficient. I'm also an ambivert, so I do find better ways to connect this way. I think that it's better for the environment up to an extent. And overall, in that way, I can meet people around the world. So yeah, I guess like the internet age is really doing me right. So we decided not to have one event, let's say one climatic moment where everybody meets, but we decided to do something ongoing from September till November. And we're inaugurating today with VUCA as a first open forum. We also have the hackathon, which will officially start next week, and with a demo day finishing on the 26th. And we also have weekly open forums with different discussions, which are approximately close to roundtables. And then, of course, finishing with a conference and a matchathon. So a matchathon meaning a way for people to connect with each other and meet each other. So this specific thing is addressed to this community, data natives. But who are the data natives? Well, here are a couple of faces that make up this community and make up what we call data natives. But essentially in numbers, because we like crunching numbers, data natives means this big community that we have that is around the world. It's more than 80,000 people. It includes data scientists, it includes founders and researchers, developers and consultants, predominantly coming from Europe and the DACH region. Some come from the US and some from Asia. We're also, of course, talking about the young, the agile, and the data-driven. By 2025, it is believed that more than 75% of the global workforce will be a data native, and that there's the ones that they are interested to come to our community events and interested to be part of the conference. They're coming because we bring content and opportunities to meet other like-minded peers. This is a bit of a map of where everybody's coming from. So it's a long list. And as I mentioned, this is pretty much our timeline. So we're starting now with the open forum. We have the hackathon that starts from next Thursday. Then the hackers are meeting each other, forming teams, getting mentorship sessions, and doing a demo day. Every week we're having something like an open roundtable, which is called the open forum, and then we're finishing with a conference and a matchathon. I'm not going to go into more details. Actually, I think that this is going into more deep. What I would like to highlight, though, in this session is that everybody who is currently watching this stream is logged in the Data Natives member site. So hello, you are now part of our community on the website, and you can see all the things that you can do. If you are a premium ticket holder, you can also come and network with us after the session. You can come and meet the speakers, have an intimate one-on-one, or more rather like intimate in the sense of getting to know them and asking them all the questions that you want, and also put your questions right now at the Zoom chat, where during the conversation, if you have any specific questions that you would like to ask. So without further ado, I would like to slowly introduce our panelists and invite them to join me on stage. At our rehearsal before, we said that unfortunately, since we're living in this online times, we can't have the same effect as in coming and joining on stage. So we will be, the speakers will be joining one by one, and I will be introducing them. Of course, they will also add anything else they would like to add, but they've been carefully selected to create a diverse panel atmosphere and to bring their own expertise to the table. So I would like to introduce first Mark Turrell, who has also been part of our webinars in the past. Actually, right after the COVID-19 outbreak and lockdown, he came in because of his research on contagious and how news and information and things are spreading. He came and gave us his input on that. He's an entrepreneur, a strategist, an educator, an author, and he has a lot to say around the topic and a lot of knowledge to share with us. He's also the founder of unDavos and a technology pioneer and a young global leader. So thank you, Mark, for coming. Then I would like to invite Giovanna Jaramillo Gutierrez, who also participated in one of our previous webinars with the Women in Digital Health group, where we talked about women in AI. She's an epidemiologist, a data scientist, a lifelong learner who's driven by the ethical use of AI to solve business challenges related to the UN SDGs. She's an active member of All Women.Tech community, EPIT alumni, Go On Networks, ETU, Who AI for Health and Women in Digital Health. So thank you so much for joining us again. Also, another conversation that we had actually was about healthcare in another previous conference. So thanks very much for coming and sharing your expertise. Then, speaking of our expertise, we sourced an expert in VUCA, a specific a consultant, organizational consultant, who has been talking about expert in leadership and agile transformation for navigation in a VUCA-World and VUCA facilitator. She's actually the owner of VUCA-World.org. So we're really, really honored to have you here in this discussion, specifically about VUCA. Waltraud Gläser, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for the chance.
From now on, called Volti, just to make sure that I don't butcher your name every time I mention it. And Yeah, and similarly, Artemis Konvanzi, who from his bio I can see has been doing a lot of things, a lot of multidisciplinary, diverse things. First of all, traveled the world and lived in a lot of interesting cities and countries: Ukraine, Israel, Switzerland, France, Germany, and Greece. I'm Greek, by the way, so curious to know about your experience in Greece. He's a mathematician, has worked in the past as a researcher, a data scientist, a consultant for the government in Estonia, a business optimizer, a presenter, entrepreneur, a leader, a children tutor, teacher, a fisherman of sharks, a boxing trainer assistant, loader in the mill, dishwasher, light DJ, loader in Palestine. I'm getting the feeling that now it's becoming more funny. But now essentially he's been really working lately in a research around socioeconomic systems, which extends to the classical economic theory. So welcome panelists. Thank you so much for joining us. I would like to start with a question to everybody. Why do you personally find the VUCA concept interesting and applicable to today's realities, be it in business or social aspects? Mark, would you like to take the lead? Do you want to start?
Sure. It's to a large extent, it's any semblance the world has ever had of stability, of certainty, was all an illusion anyway. If you look at events, whether it's 10 years ago, 40 years ago, there are things that seem to be stable, but it was more because information traveled relatively slowly. And in fact, we have always lived in a complex, dynamic, adaptive world. I think what's happening just right now is that many people, when they experience uncertainty, sort of volatility and ambiguity, it tends to be just one or two things in their life. Will the company that I'm working for still be there in 6 months? That's volatile. What I think has made this thing much more prevalent in people's minds today is that the incidence of COVID and countries' response to COVID has pretty much forced everything to change instantly everywhere, and there is no normal to go back to. So if you like, this COVID thing has pushed people kicking and screaming into realizing that the world is not certain. Many people are desperate to go back to a normal, any kind of normal. But right now, until there is a solid workable vaccine, it means that everybody is having to live a world that they had no idea that they ever would experience this type of thing. So for me, I've been living this thing all along, but it's fun having more people join the club now.
I'm glad you see it as fun, but we're enjoying the ride.
Okay, then, Elena, I will take over because I think that's a very good, was a very good approach to your question from my side. I mean, I'm really interested in VUCA because I really want to understand the world I'm living in, the world, what is the context I'm living in, and I'm very much interested in finding solution. As you already mentioned, to be able to have at least a certain mass of self-conducting possibilities, and to understand what kind of influence I personally can take on situations, because I'm really much, I mean, I'm 57 years old, and so I have been a leader, and I have had a very rich professional work life, and more and more I'm finding out that it's really important for me to do things which I really feel comfortable with and which really belongs to my needs and which really are a bit more, let's say, attractive to the way that they suit to myself and not only to a company or to any other stakeholders. And therefore, it's very interesting for me to find out, okay, how does VUCA influence my surrounding, my environment? How, what kind of, as I said, influence can I myself have? And can use? What kind of solutions can I find and be very, for example, I'm a creative person and I think out of the box, yeah. And I think these VUCA times, especially since COVID-19, everybody is experiencing his or her own VUCA. This really gives us a good opportunity to see things from different perspective and really to put some of the old models, some of the old concepts on to a proof, and yes, and find new ways for collaboration, for exchanging, for at least really maybe making the world a bit better, at least for you personally and for those you really want to take care of.
Thanks for your contribution. Anyone else? Giovanna?
I can add maybe.
Please.
Actually, I liked what Mark said. My life experience was quite, what you listed is not a joke, it's truth. Even though at some point it was funny, it is. Sometimes I look at my life and I think it is strange. But coming back to the question, I also felt when everything started that mostly we joined the club in sense that the world is a chaos and there is a lot of it's uncertain. There is not a lot of uncertainty. It's uncertain, and to deal with it, it's impossible for a normal person to deal with it. So for me, I raised with in uncertainty and so on. So I'm kind of like survival machine. So for me, it was quite easy to adapt to all the changes. I would say quite natural. But in general, people are afraid of uncertainty, of unpredictability, and so on and so forth. So we as humans created systems which are repetitive and so on. And this is how we deal with the chaos of world. And now, because we could have hidden, I agree with Mark, within these systems of government, of capitalism, whatever, medical care, and then we see now that it's actually the reality is different, and this came to our awareness. I agree with it. So regarding VUCA, I find it as one of the models to deal with uncertainty, to be prepared for this. So I think it's quite important to be prepared. That's actually the whole idea of civilization, I would say, more or less. Thank you.
Thank you. So I found, I read a bit about VUCA. I was not familiar, so thank you for having me, because I'm really learning a lot already. So I didn't know, but my whole line of work is VUCA without knowing, because I'm a field epidemiologist. And so it's been 10 years, I work as a field epidemiologist. So that means I respond to outbreaks. That's like my main business. And so we do outbreak preparedness and outbreak response. So for the last 10 years, I responded to all year around, there are outbreaks. We don't know in Europe because we're not so affected by them, or less affected, but actually it's all year round. So I never know where I'm going to work, for how long, what pathogen I'm going to face, like how we're going to respond. It depends on the setting. It's like a roster, you can be sent anywhere. And often it's in the tropics, because that's where mostly, unfortunately, the healthcare systems are weak, and the data systems are weak as well. So basically, like, now that I read about it, I'm very interested, because how we prepare for it, because I don't know, every year my certainty levels are maybe a couple months. I am sent somewhere 3 weeks, maybe I stay for a year until the outbreak is over. So I'm very interested in this book now, because it's a framework of mind, and how I came about getting comfortable with kind of this line of work where you don't know what you're going to face when you get there, who you're going to work with, what are the information systems in place that will be like finally, like the decision-making support for the country to respond to an outbreak, for example. So I've been working on the COVID response since March, and I'm still working on it. And so basically my work is like, I start and I don't know when it's going to end. So this is my second pandemic. The first one was in 2009. And I think if more people and organizations, even businesses, operate with this resilience of approaching a problem from a scenario-based and being prepared. And as the others mentioned, most people, I don't know, even like my family, they're very uncomfortable with uncertainty, and obviously they think I'm very strange because I like going in uncertain places. And for example, Elena knows I was in Nord Kivu in Congo for Ebola outbreak. Now I'm working on COVID. And I think we are more resilient than we think, but it's like practice, right? We have to be exposed to uncertainty to learn how to deal with it and be okay with it. And I think this VUCA framework is an excellent way for organizations and businesses to make maybe processes more agile and instill resilience in their employees and in people, but reassure them, yes, maybe there is a lot of unknown, but it can be okay if we put in place systems that allow for this flexibility.
Thank you very much to everybody for your comments. There's a lot of interesting input so far, and definitely, yeah, systems do create a sort of comfort or illusion that things are gonna be the same and not volatile. And of course, there's a lot of other pandemics that we are not part of, so it doesn't really affect us. So good, like it's important to hear that and to know that actually pandemic and outbreaks like that happen all the time in the world. But let's go back to the basics before we continue the conversation. And I would like to address these questions to Walty, because as I said at the beginning, the term VUCA was coined after Second World War, so depicting the world as it was perceived at that time, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. But right now, with technological disruption, globalization, digitalization, pandemic that's been going on for the last 5-6 months, which has shaking us all, how did this concept change?
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm always wondering when we are talking about the VUCA concept, because at least VUCA is just naming certain things I realize in my environment. I realize I realize volatility, which has been a term from the stock exchange, for example, the financial markets. I realize uncertainty. I realize the complexity and the ambiguity, which means having different perspectives and not knowing what is right or wrong. Yeah. So, and I'm always wondering why we are talking about a VUCA concept, because at least it's just an impression of things that happen around us, which we have been used to for many, many years, because VUCA concept, or if you say the VUCA term, is going back to the 1985, which was in the context of leadership concepts. And then only at the beginning of the 90s, the American War College took it up again to at least to have an idea that the Cold War ended, and so we lost control. We didn't know what's going on. So things that have been stable, things that have been really proved for years, and where we always were safe enough to know, okay, how to handle the situation, because we knew the good and we knew the bad parties of the world. Yeah, this was immediately broken, and we lost control. And now what people are trying to is, and that's a human thing, we always need to have self-control, or at least we want to understand, okay, how can we be resilient? How can we take care of ourselves and of things which are really important to us? And so if we really talk about the VUCA concept, then I would really appreciate much more that we think in solutions, which would mean we give a different we name it differently, yeah. So we say instead of volatility, we talk about vision. Instead of uncertainty, we talk about understanding. Instead of complexity, we talk about clarity. And instead of the ambiguity, we talk about agility and adaptability. So if really the concept would be in the sense of the meaning, it's much more how can we deal with the things which have been in this world all before, even if we go way back when, centuries ago, and follow much more all the things we just learned, that the people really want to know in which way do we have to navigate, which is a direction I can really follow, which are the situations I can influence, where can I really take care about things which I'm really losing control about, for example. Yeah, so this would for my intent much more be the concept, or would be worth to name it a concept, a VUCA concept, because otherwise VUCA is simply describing a world with certain characters.
So positive reframing, in other words.
Yeah, exactly. Reframing, that's the perfect word. Yeah, yeah. And at least, I mean, it really helps you to personally understand much more what is it, because a thing which you cannot really grab, a thing where you don't have a picture of. Yeah. So at least instead of going insane and losing orientation, maybe this would really give you an orientation, would give you the possibility to focus again. So, and this would be, for my understanding, much more a concept.
Thank you. Artemi, you wanted to add something?
I wanted to add, so actually the comment that centuries, there was, what exactly was said, I forgot. That century ago we encourage the same things or something like this. It's not exactly the case because our socio-economical system is different. It's not like this. It was 100 years ago. Our environment is different. We have right now internet. We have different psychological patterns. We have different ways of influence people through media. This is actually what is understood. Mark studies. It's a matter of research. And so on and so forth. So the world really different. At the same time, I do understand what you mean. There always were epidemics and so on, and people die, people get sick, and so on. But it's like, how to say, there are some new things. I would say like this. So there are some basics, which is like what you say. This is VUCA. It can be different. The term itself works also maybe before, but the variables differ with time. This is what I wanted to say.
For sure, I just want to add, yeah, the dynamics really changed, and maybe the speed really changed, yeah, and the feeling that it's really going crazy right now, that it's so dynamic, that it's so really chaotic, that it's so complex, and that you are really losing your focus or your direction. This really has changed, I think, a lot. But still, if you look from one technical improvement to another, there also has been changes where the people really had to stop doing things they were used to, stop using things they really like to, and had really to adapt to a new method, to a new technique, to a new environment, to new habits. That's what I mean. Yeah. So that there are some aspects and some parameters that really changed actually in these days. Yeah. And due to the technical development and all these things. Yeah. I think we are not far away from each other, right?
I don't agree on this regard. It's already enters the stuff which I've been researching. What you're saying, it can be applied for horses and cars, but it cannot be applied for appearance of internet and media.
Okay.
It's more tricky than this. We entered to psychology, but I propose to push it further. There are some differences, but of course, we can discuss later.
Well, I think don't keep us hanging. Maybe tell us, what do you think is different? I mean, from your research as well, with the focus on social and economic systems today, how does VUCA relate, and what do you think is different?
What exactly the question? Can you ask me something particular?
So yes, but basically you disagree. So I would like to hear more on your thoughts on your disagreements.
What is the different between now and previous times?
Yes, yes.
So
based on your research.
I would say if to pinpoint the main difference is the fact that it's now possible to access consciousness and subconsciousness, if already going back, of billions of people through media, and this can be used for it creates a different dynamics between the world, between society, because there are also some interest groups that can actually create topics, create trends, and so on and so forth. So it creates different dynamics. So if you look at 100 years ago, if something like this, if something happened in another village, take example Greece, it's very disconnected. One island is completely different than the other one, and so on and so forth. Now we're bridging the gap, we're closing the gap, and it creates a different dynamics of the whole society and other things. If we already talking about the theory, it will take some time. It based on and we can take some time. I think the main point is this. This is the main difference. There is different psychological dynamic.
What do you think, Mark? Yes.
So one of the challenges that I can see, so if there's a model where we jump to the solution, so vision, we need, and nobody would disagree with that, but the thing is that outcome is exactly the same thing as for linear systems. You still need a vision of where you want to go to and a plan and everything else. I think where there is a disconnect in people's fundamental understanding of uncertainty, there's a fundamental disconnect understanding complex systems. And I think it's very easy to make simple mistakes. And I had the word chaos being used. Well, chaos is interesting because there are actually extremely few actually chaotic systems. Chaotic systems are extremely rare and very temporary. You have systems that appear to be chaotic, but it tends to be the intersection of complex systems. So the fact that somebody managed to get COVID in this particular place just maybe meant that person got on the bus at that time. And what happens is that there are things that look like they are chaotic, but they're not. So, but people do not get taught what complex systems are. It's very hard to intuit. You can't just imagine it out of your common sense about how these systems are. In fact, if anything, people are taught linearity. B comes after A. I mean, our alphabet is linear. All of these things are linear. So this gives most people a fundamental thinking problem about just getting their head around this. Right now, the amount of people that are super struggling with COVID and everything else, it's a really good practical example that they can't handle it. But what's interesting, if you look at why they're struggling to handle it, is that many of the things that our society has done to, let's say, ameliorate the negative effects of COVID are outside of our control. Governments just did things and gave out lots and lots of money. We weren't asked to do this, and all of a sudden people just start working and getting paid. So if you like, they haven't really been confronted with actually materially having to deal with this uncertainty. It means, therefore, that, there is a tremendous learning opportunity now for people, but I really don't see people taking this opportunity to learn anything. If anything, I just see them spending their time looking at Netflix, and they're just actually looking at Netflix. But it's a mindset. It's a total, it's seeing the world through a different set of eyes. And I can understand how hard that is for people. However, the world is not what it looks like.
It seems to be coming up a lot, like Giovanna mentioned, seeing the world differently now that she's introduced to VUCA. Walter is talking about positive reframing of VUCA. You're saying, Mark, that people are not even understanding or not even seeing chaos or understanding uncertainty. And of course, at the same time, Artemis just mentioned that it's different, just a different psychology. But let's examine things one by one, I would say. So here, what data natives, of course, data is very important to us. So as an epidemiologist, Giovanna, I would like to ask you, so, there's a saying that in VUCA we fear, In data we trust. Just substitute everything with data. How can data science really help us bring more clarity to the increasing complexity that Mark as well mentioned before?
Yeah, so obviously, because I'm an epidemiologist, data is the whole thing we do, right? So basically, traditionally, we use, like in my field, the health data, right? So medical records, laboratory information. But we are in a very exciting time because we actually, people's behavior is often a predictive way of knowing where we can have like outbreaks, for example, in this particular example. And today we have a lot of online data that could be used actually, and it's been used for businesses and marketing, but not so much, or it's quite recent that traditional organizations in public health are considering using, for example, social media. And so this means that we really need to work hand in hand with different professionals like data scientists. And there's, I just want to say thank you for data scientists, because they are really willing to help out, and they did a lot of volunteering actually online. So that's really great. I think talking about positive outcomes of this COVID-19, I think there's a lot of collaboration out there.
Yeah.
And so for me, data is important, obviously, but I must say something, that domain expertise is key. Like I can be very good at statistical analysis and taking data from the off-the-shelf data sets I find online, but interpretation is everything, and local context as well. So just to give you a small example that I think is very revealing to me, is that people say, oh, this country has that many cases, that many deaths. But you have to realize that how countries report and detect cases can be different. And this means that there are artifacts, and you cannot make conclusions comparing different countries' data so easily. Maybe as a data scientist, I think, oh, this is just a number, but you need the domain expertise, whether it's in health or in another sector. If you don't have the critical thinking of actually understanding what the data means, it's very difficult to make a conclusion. And it's even specifically in health is quite dangerous, actually. So it's not good enough just to be good in statistics and machine learning and make predictions. You actually need to take time to talk to stakeholders and understand what's the impact of using this data. And then in the whole VUCA context, I think that whether it's an organization or businesses, once you have a very clear vision and the goals, you have to adapt the phases that will take you to that goal, and the KPIs to whatever is the evolving situation. But whether you're a business or an organization, I believe that's a very important point. And that's why scenario-based thinking, where you actually predict, have predictions based on different scenarios. I mean, in my field is more like population, underlying condition, climate, geography, etc. In business is other things depending on your business. But this kind of approach, very multidisciplinary and maybe critical thinking. I feel our education system is not. I'm not convinced we're teaching that to kids nowadays, but I think we really question everything. That's so yeah, data great, but it's not only the data. The context is important.
Yeah, and Giovanna, I want to add exactly, because this is exactly what you mentioned. What a VUCA attitude could really be strengthened by is to have an attitude thinking in interdisciplinarity, going out of the silos, using, for example, really a very intelligent mixture of data-based frames and maybe results which I can combine with, for example, also intuition, because we are a lot talking about database, data-based and artificial intelligence, all these things. Yeah, I think really what the VUCA world really needs is that the people allow themselves to really listen to themselves, to their, what I said in the beginning, what do I need? How do I feel comfortable, or what do I feel comfortable with? How can I use my really my own brain? How can I really be a bit more sensitive about things, a bit more, yes, of course, sensibility is also a very important thing, but how can I really have intelligent framework, collaborating with different disciplines, collaborating with the different professions, for example, and bringing people together, looking in a whole on a scenario which doesn't have an answer right now. Like Mark said, we're not learning. I think I cannot really go with that. We, for example, in Germany, we are learning a lot of how to handle COVID-19. But I think one thing is we should not think we can do it right away at the first glance and with the first attempt. We really need to be open to learn. We really need to be open for experiences. And we really need to look from different contexts. For example, I'm doing much work with leaders, with managers. And they are complaining about their employees. Oh, this guy is not agile anymore, or not agile enough. And I said, okay, what do you know about this person? What do you know about the resources this person has, for example, in a different role? And if you look at different roles that people are having in the life in whole, not only a professional role, but a private role, for example, yeah, then they have so many resources. They have so many maybe solutions. They have so many courage to try out, but the context really needs to allow this, or the context really has to give the circumstances, the frameworks to do it and to try. Yeah, agility is also a lot about trying and failing fast. Yeah, and so I think if we really look much more that we need the collaboration, and that we really need much more to figure out what is the common problem, because everybody is talking about his or her own problem. We really need to talk about the common problem, because only if we have a really common problem that it's really my concern to solve it because I'm concerned by it, then maybe I'm really open to use, for example, to let data help me find my help me my way, or I'm open to talk to somebody whom I think of, or I don't know what is her profession, and am I good enough to deal with this person? But then it could really be we can learn from each other, and then I think we can. That's why maybe what I said, it sounds trivial, that I really much think on how can we learn day by day in a VUCA world using means we had before, but of course having now another stress to find solutions, to figure out what will be right or wrong. And in a VUCA world, we don't have right or wrong. We only have things that really suits, and maybe not just for the moment, or maybe just for a certain context, but not for the long term. So even if we're talking about a 2-year strategy, forget about that in some contexts, because as Giovanna said, there is such a dynamic that we really cannot even figure. And so I think, yeah, that's it.
Interesting angle. I want to return actually to talking about how basically can data science help us bring more clarity to the increasing complexity. And return this question to Artyom, since you also come as a data scientist. And actually you made a comment before we started this conversation of how you're also interested about how much we contribute to the complexity as society. So without wanting to philosophize or make it more complicated, as a question, what is your thoughts on how can data science help us actually bring more clarity to the complexity?
Oh, I got a bit confused. So there are two questions: how data science can bring clarity. It depends. It's a bit hard. The question is, I don't know what to answer exactly. So as we can see, probably data science can help with allocating resources in case of Giovanna Jaramillo, so we can actually model and so on. The question about so this is one thing, of course, we can model things, we can understand better, we can allocate them and so on, we can spot patterns, but obviously data is just data. It's there are people behind it, and people are not numbers. And I'm a mathematician telling you this, if people are not numbers, it's more. And of course, regarding also this adding complexities and how much we contribute. So systems are complex. It is very hard to spot them. It is very hard to explain them to people. That I would say that I would not agree with Mark about linearity. I would say that sometimes for many people, linearity is too complex. So I worked in real estate business, and there are some tricks that maklers, real estate agents use to make a deal, which mathematically doesn't make any sense, but it's used all over Germany. So, and people actually, you need to think a bit deeper. So the problem starts when you need to think a bit deeper, when there are hidden motives and the dynamics that you start with this system. So while working on the theory, I came to some interesting realization about digitization and how society actually right now is balanced and actually is not balanced. The systems that we build are not balanced psychologically and so on. And it's this balance is triggers itself. In particular, it can be shown that the way how we do digitization right now, it causes in future and midterm further disbalance. What I mean by disbalance, I mean that there will be more people that are poor, and the people that already rich will be richer. It's one of the things. There are many. That's it. So from this point of view, I would say that it's instrument that we don't really aware of all its consequences, which are not, as Mark said, linear, but there are also second derivative consequences if we're already talking about math. So there are consequences that are not seen straight away. So these things should be actually taken into account when we build systems that people are involved in. And the good example about this, I've been now in Greece. I've been to two places. One is, anyway, I can give some real example. If you have questions, you can ask. That's it.
If I, with that, when I talk about linearity, for me, this is people believe things are linear, but they are still not linear. So they make a mistake. I also make a distinction between complex systems and complicated systems. Some things are just complicated, and they may or may not have any linearity to them. I think your real estate example actually would illustrate a complex system, because just because it makes no sense means there's something else that you're not seeing in there. That kind of begins to move into obviously a complex system. There is this desire to, like, MBA people, engineers get taught to turn everything into linear systems, which you can understand. But many of these things, they are understandable. You just have to have a different set of rules to handle it. And I think there's just the vocabulary is missing for many people. They can't do it. The other one is that they're so used to solving problems near instantly that they just want to jump to the bloody solution. So they don't care about this COVID stuff or anything else. Just tell me what the stock market will be like at the end of this year so I can place my money. Where should it go? So they don't revel or rejoice in this sort of complexity, which means they fundamentally don't understand it. Now, what's even more strange is that those people that are quite happy in linearity, they will be right 19 years out of 20. And it's related to this comes into things like black swan, very, very strange events. They happen very, very rarely, but that means that the traditional rules work most of the time for everything. It's really now what we're finding out is that sort of in this particular time where so many things are dramatically uncertain, I wouldn't say, let's say, sort of slightly uncertain. The stock market goes up and down. For most people, that's not a life or death thing. But right now, this virus thing at the beginning, none of us knew that if we have a cold and a sniffle, are we going to be dying on the streets with bubonic plague in 4 days? Because we didn't know at the beginning. So I do see that this this lack of understanding we have about complex systems is damaging to us. However, those people that handle linearity will be right most of the time. So it's a little bit perverse.
I would maybe comment that if people, so to think about linearity, you need to actually to think, you need to reflect. But if you, it's even to do the first step, you need to enter the door, or at least to knock. And afterwards, you need to see what is in the door. So I would say that the tendency is that maybe sometimes people don't even knock the door to understand, to question how it works. Maybe with all the medias, with all the Netflix and so on, you actually so much your brain filled with information that you need also to have energy and time to actually knock the door, then open it, and then start looking what is in these systems. So I would say that it's also, I see this kind of dynamics. Yeah.
And still, I mean, no pain, no gain. I mean, we are talking about things which some people really don't feel concerned by, because they still feel secure. They still have, let's take the agility. For example, you're working with agility frameworks like Scrum. Yeah, there is a very large still need for framework, waterfall process, for example. That I think that things have to be existent at the same time. I don't know what is the word, the existing of different approaches, different solutions, and really to find out, okay, what would be the most suitable for a certain situation. Yeah, so that everybody really knows, okay, I have some influence on finding, let's say, a solution, or finding a way, or dealing with chaos, dealing with complexity. This is what people really look for, because they really want to feel secure by doing things in a way that they have what's in for me, that they have an answer what's in for me. And as long as they don't find really a pain point, they don't think about about this global and this complex situation we are just talking about. So I really want to put it down to earth, to a person who really is affected by VUCA. Yeah. So, and I think if we really would much more find out, okay, who really is affected by VUCA? In which way is the person affected by VUCA? How can we use, for example, data science to find some way out to navigate betterly? How can we do really very individual solutions for individual settings? Yeah, so that we don't really put it in a global sense, because then people they are not interested in. If they don't really have an effect on it, or if they don't really feel it's really my point I have to look for, then I think they will not engage. Well, regardless of all the means we could use.
And looking at data science and the algorithms that we all use, how useful will 2020's data set be to predict behavior in 2021 for the sales of strawberries and airline tickets?
Exactly.
We have a fundamental, I mean, data scientists have really shit out of luck on this one, because they've had more and more data sets pulling in from more and more things, and gradually in the world of big numbers, the numbers look more and more stable, and yet you've had this dramatic change event, and it means all the numbers are crap. What the algorithm will work out, where should your self-driving car be? How many carrots should be delivered to the supermarket? How much toilet paper do we need? These things where there've been stability and it's been a little bit of improvement. But right now, because we have this very, very strange year or months, and we don't know what next year is going to be like, it'll mean then it goes into almost, I mean, I still have a little giggle when I look at people's AI papers, because there's so little AI being used in AI papers. Best case scenario, they're using some simple R-squared modeling, and that's it, off a data set. There's nothing. But right now, because venture capitalists are kind of gullible, and employees get excited by working in AI companies, but all of these things will have a data set problem, because if you have 10 years of solid data and the 11th year is just totally all over the place, what do you do next year? I mean, I'd be fascinated from the data scientists how they're planning to handle data analytics in 2021 because and
Mark,
just personally, so I used to be in 25 different countries a year, and I have been for 10 years. Therefore, I would predict that this year I'd be in 25 countries. How many have I been to? 3. That's weird. Next year, maybe it's 3 again, or maybe it's only 1. It's a fundamental shift, and I think people are really going to struggle with that. Sorry, Vali.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. It is indeed. But first of all, we really have to accept this. I think we really have to accept reality, and maybe we really have, first of all, just to realize that's the situation we are in right now. Okay, and just looking back, okay, what still is stable, what still is valid, so where can I really rely on? This is very important, I think. And maybe there are some means already which are efficient enough to give me an idea how to continue within this unstable situation. And instead of always looking for a new approach, instead of looking always for some hip solutions, why not standing still and first really find out, okay, how much does this VUCA world concern myself, me personally? And how can I really, for example, exchange like we do, with other people, get ideas about it, really think what worked in the past, what could be a very out of the box thinking solution for the future? How can we create? Can we be creative? How can we collaborate? How can we, what we already said, talk from one discipline to the other one, and really have a self-confidence that for the here and now, we are able to find solutions and we are able to navigate, but maybe say goodbye to what you said, okay, what will be next September in a year? So what's bad about that? But that's the predictability the people are always looking for. And this is, I think, one of the topics, which was, of course, one success factor of the past. In the past, we could say, okay, if you do this and that, or if the market exchanges like it develops like this, then we will have this and that success. Okay, this really we really have to say goodbye to. This will not work anymore. But what happens is that very new things we don't think about might happen if we are open to it. And then I think, of course, data can help and a lot of other things can help. So what I'm really saying is that maybe, that's my personal thing. I don't want to be too what's the word? I really want to calm down. I really don't want to stress myself so much, because of all the things that happen. The more I think about what do I need to feel comfortable and how can I serve my environment by the means I got and the means I can maybe use, then this would be a very good influence for the whole world, I think, if you know what I mean.
Well, actually, so I grew up on Intel was my first employer, and Andy Grove, one of the founders of Intel, his logic wasn't to be cool and comfortable. His logic was that only the paranoid survive. So I think in this very, very uncertain world, I'd rather be Andy Grove and be paranoid than to be chill. Unless, particularly if I'm glad that I no longer have my company, because now it would be an absolute nightmare. It's really, really, really genuinely hard, and it's precipice time.
The whole idea of being agile and introducing like uncertainty in startups, that doesn't work. That's actually
then it goes cash flow. Just like, do you have any cash?
The bridging that became a nightmare. The sort of like the startup paradigm that became a nightmare. I think Artemis wanted to add something as well on the conversation. We have to wrap soon, so we can go to the networking part. But please,
if we don't have time.
No, but please go. I think we have time for one more comment.
I think it's more complex than this. Speaking about paranoids and survival, so I am a survival machine in some sense, but these skills are very expensive to get, and I don't advise anyone. And the reason why you don't feel comfortable is because you have in the past some particular conditions. Now they changed, and if they were quite far away from the from raw world, if we can say like this, then of course it will be quite uncomfortable and quite stressful. I can understand this. Speaking about reality, it's a bit tricky thing because reality for each people is different. I did some experiments also being homeless and so on. I also talked to homeless people, also with very rich people, and so on and so forth. With my projects, I also been here in Greece in the area where the refugees, also in the area where very, very rich people are, extremely rich. So reality is different for different people. And this is, it's hard to find a common ground. So we cannot say about reality and so on. I would say maybe propose a bit different perspective on the whole thing. So, you know, when you have a couple, the problem, and if the relationship is not very good, so one of the way when it's getting very bad is to have kids. Why? Because it's the additional stress factor and all the inconsistencies, and this is a so I would say that maybe if we had some problems with our systems before, and maybe as a COVID, as a stress factor, just put them alive. So for instance, the fact that economy of many countries collapsed, many people lost jobs, and they are on the border of survival, and so on and so forth. So I'm thinking that maybe there are deeper problems, not only COVID, but something more deeper than this. That's it.
And on that note, I would like to, I was curious while you were talking the whole time, and we need to wrap things up now. To point the one common theme that was coming up again and again in the conversation, which is how to turn challenges into potential opportunities and possibilities. I mean, apart from being very hard and run away if you're an entrepreneur at the moment type of comment, what would be your last perhaps, like, in this, if we were to like conclude this talk of this like unstable and pretty uncertain year that has been very much defined by VUCA, what would be your, let's say, your last comment on Earth?
Well, my last comment is really not only to look at what we are losing and what we are really afraid of, but really what we are gaining and what it is good for. Because if I look at this COVID-19, only yesterday I thought about what was good for me, what was in for me by COVID-19, even though I had no chance to choose it. I really had to deal with the situation, but really to think what it is it good for, and not only thinking in a loss, but also thinking in a gain, in a kind of gain. What are we gaining by these times, and how can these gains maybe really help you to be more happy, help you to be more self-confident, help you to be more self-conscious, and at least encourage you to deal with these times that will be VUCA forever. I don't have a doubt about that. That would be my last comment. Really look what it's good for and see the glass is half full and not only half empty. And just check your own attitude towards the question: is it just bad, or is it also maybe only last Saturday I had a keynote about how lucky we are. It's only VUCA. So because I really think we can handle VUCA. So that's my comment.
Giovanna.
Yeah, I mean, for me, okay, I'm going to say one thing silly is now nobody thinks I'm a dermatologist because before, when I used to say I'm an epidemiologist, people say, "Can you look at my skin?" Or so now actually people know what does it mean to. They heard what is epidemiology. Sorry, that's just a joke. No, I mean, for me, it's the amount of collaboration, unprecedented collaboration, whether it's scientific or people finding solutions together for their communities. I think we have to see this as an amazing opportunity that actually has also not only negative effects, but as I mentioned, on the long term, I have relatives or friends that really question themselves, or what is the future of work? Are we preparing our children to, is our education system preparing our children to deal with these changes? And I believe this disruption leads to creative approaches and innovations. So that I would leave it like that. That is maybe, as Wally said, we should reframe VUCA with the positive words. Thank
you. So from me, I think there is no reality. Everything is a matter of perspective, and the very fact that we're ending up by saying, here's the situation, but it doesn't have to be like this, make it different, really just highlights nothing actually is real. Everything is your perspective, and if you think it's an opportunity, you're probably right. If you think it's not, you're probably right too. But I think the other one on a personal level for many people and societal level is that this situation will most likely get much worse at the end of this year and next year, because many of the things that society has done to give out free money and everything else, a lot of that free money disappears, and you start to have the companies drop back and everything else. So the biggest challenge that I can see for most people is living in hope without any grounding in today's perceived reality. We need to be very careful that this thing hasn't even got bad yet. Now, the only good spot is the virus itself. Gradually, most viruses tend to become less lethal over time and more infectious, and it looks like this is one of those things. So, however, right now, but the economic impact of this and how we've handled it does create a lot of issues and challenges for all types of businesses, organizations, everything from CEOs and presidents to bus drivers and librarians. It'll be tricky.
Can be tricky.
Tricky.
Artemi?
Second. In general, if there was last my words, then I would say that read 7 sentences of ancient Greek philosophers on Delphi's temple. This is one thing, they were right. But speaking about today, it's very hard. So I have a different perspective on the responses on coronavirus. So I would like also, I think that there is a big danger about the consequences, mostly economical and so on. I analyzed it in March, and I think that this is what we're gonna see. We see it now, and we're gonna see it later. So I would say that this, as I see it, I perceive it, this is the biggest danger of socioeconomic consequences. But I would like to finish not with this, but the other thing, that think of yourself, like if this last sentences, think of yourself as a humanity and think where are you leading? What kind of life do you want to live? That's it. Where are you heading?
Right, so now everybody has to have some existential thinking to do. So I would like to ask you to take a picture. Well, of course, for whoever is here in the Zoom, there's the private meeting rooms that you can continue in meeting with the speakers that we welcome today in the first panel. And everybody, we have our photographer here. She's gonna take a screenshot. So everybody smile at the camera. Maybe wave actually at the camera. Should we wave? I think we should wave. Helen, do you want to also come in the picture actually? So it doesn't look awkward with the data natives there logo. Show us your face too. There you go. Okay, let's take a picture together. You taking the picture, right? Let's all wave. All right, cool. Is that good, Helen? All right, probably it is, otherwise she wouldn't have gone. All right, so very nice having you in this panel. Thank you very much for the fruitful discussion. sometimes more pessimistic than others, always existential. And for sure, I think Mark advised me back in March to to just shut down my company and let it all go, because we're living in this uncertain VUCA times. But there you go, I'm still here, Mark. And
I didn't say shut down everything. To be very fair, I mean, I was directionally in that way.
No, I know. Yes, we're still live. I was joking. You didn't say that. You didn't say.
It's 100 people to make sure I'm not nasty or anything.
Yes, you said save the queen. Even better. You said save the queen.
Yes, I did say save the queen, exactly.
But anyway, what I wanted to say with this kind of like funny way was that I do think that we need to reframe our thinking, and we need to think positive, because it is a very volatile, uncertain, ambiguous and complex time. But yeah, it's all about the way you think things. And I do think that we should just be equipped in a specific way. And if anything, these are just challenges of learning. But without further ado, so thank you everybody for being here. If you'd like to meet Mark, Giovanna, Walti, and Artemi, please go to the meeting rooms. For the ones who are here in this meeting, for the ones that are not here, make sure to get your premium ticket so we can see you in these rooms. So have a good day and see